All right, welcome everybody. Looks like we've got some people who are still rolling in right now. We're just going to get started in just a second. I'll just give everybody about 1 minute to get in. All right, well, we are right at 6 o'clock. We'll get started. So hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Water Wednesday webinar, Ready, Set, Store, Emergency Preparedness for Fire, Earthquake, and Beyond. We know emergencies can happen at any time: wildfires, earthquakes, power outages, and more. In some of our past Water Wednesdays, we've shared how East Bay Med... Oh, okay, we got a little bit of an echo there. All right, I'm gonna mute Steve there. Okay, and sorry about that. In past webinars, we've shared how East Bay Med prepares our water and wastewater infrastructure to withstand these events. So in case you missed them, our webinar last March focused on how East Bay Med is preparing for wildfires. And then in last October of 2024, we talked about the Hayward scenario, a 7.0 earthquake on the Hayward Fault, and how East Bay Med has been working with the USGS to prepare for that. So if you would like to hear more about that, please go back. Those are all available on our YouTube channel. Tonight, the focus is a little bit more on you and your household. So we're going to cover what you can do to be ready at home, including the importance of storing emergency water. So we're honored to have two excellent speakers tonight. First, we're going to be hearing from Steve Bonini, who is the Manager of Security and Emergency Preparedness for East Bay Med. And then we're going to hear from Susan Teefee, Manager of Water Quality for East Bay Med. They're going to be sharing some practical tips and insights to help you feel confident about protecting your household during an emergency. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded. It's going to be available on our website within the next week at ebmed.com/waterwednesday and on our YouTube channel. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A function. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can live, and we may hold some of them till the end. If we don't get to your question tonight, or if you think of something later, please feel free to email us at waterwednesday@ebmed.com. And one more exciting note tonight. So we're going to be giving away a 3.5-gallon water brick to 10 winners. You need to enter by September 30th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at ebmed.com/giveaway. So again, that's ebmed.com/giveaway. You can do that right now. Go ahead and enter. No purchase is necessary. It's open to all residents 18 or over within East Bay Med's service area. So you just have to live within the service area. Unfortunately, it is not open to East Bay Med employees. So we're sorry about that. But all of our customers feel free to enter, and hopefully you can win a water brick so you can start storing water as soon as possible. So with that, let's dive right in. So I'm going to hand it over to our first presenter tonight, Steve Bonini, to get us started.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And I hope to focus a little bit on the emergency preparedness, more in the planning phase, because that really lends itself to being well prepared when an emergency does strike. Something's going to occur eventually to many of us. So having a plan and having those things in place ahead of time is going to make the experience and the emergency declaration a little bit easier to navigate, emotionally a little bit better to handle. There's going to be challenges, no doubt about that, but some of the planning and some of the things we do on the front end will make it a lot easier during these really trying times, these stressful times. We can go to the first slide. And my focus here is a little bit on the residential side. I'm assuming that a lot of people go through different events or different alarms or different practice sessions while they're at their place of employment. So we'll focus a little bit more on the residential side and when you're at home. So we'll just begin with the dwelling itself and really what that looks like for fire safety. I know I've been guilty of it myself, but the gorilla hair mulch that goes around the planter beds, Sometimes will be at the edge of the house, along the fence line. That doesn't do well in times of fire, high heat, sparks, out of the drain, and it blows from one house or one valley to another. And that's kind of how these things take off. So we can eliminate that and go with a zero clearance or a zero fire type of shrubbery or succulent plants around the house. That makes for a really fire resistant type of planting. The other thing to consider is your fence material. Many of us have owned our homes or been in a home for a while, and sometimes that fence will need to be replaced. The costs for other materials besides wood have come down drastically in the last 5 to 7 years. They've come down quite a bit from where they were about 20 years ago. And sometimes that composite fencing material is a better way to go and will have a price that's very, very close per linear foot to that of wood. So consider something other than wood for your fencing material. And then I live in Solano County, and we get a little bit of a wind issue at times during the year. So one of the things I noticed, both in the time where I was a first responder and just around the neighborhood where I'm at, I see a lot of branches down. That's one of the things you need to consider about the nice, beautiful trees we have in our yards or on the street, is the fact that during wind, add some water to that, and pretty soon you have weight that the branch can't handle, and the branches come down. The tree may remain in place, but those branches can cause a lot of damage. So it's something to consider as you go outside and you take a look at what is around your home, and you make sure that some of the limbs that need to be cut back. Most cities have a arborist on staff. You can get a hold of them. They'll come out and evaluate your trees for you. If it's a city tree planted in the sidewalk or closer to the street, you might want to have them come out and take a look at those as well. Just make sure the limbs aren't going anywhere. And I have in here about the assessing the depth of roots for large trees. I've personally responded to trees coming down in a combination of heavy rain and just a light wind, because the roots, due to drought that we suffer here in California quite frequently, sometimes are very close to the surface. Add a little bit of water and some wind, and those tree roots don't quite go as deep as they used to. They're more surface related, and the trees tend to blow over. We can go to the next slide. So, sticking with the theme around the house, a lot of people have propane style barbecues. While they're great for cooking food and all that, a lot of them have one propane gas container that's in it, and then people will have a spare. Well, when it comes time for a fire in the neighborhood, or I hope nothing like that ever happens, but if it does, those things heat up, and they have an explosive quality about them, and they will go off in times of fire. That's one of the things to consider, is where you keep those, how frequently you fill those. It would be best not to have them, but I know and go to something that is like a wood pellet based. There's several barbecues out there now that do nothing but wood pellets. So that's a great alternative to having the propane canisters. Many people have firearms or ammunition. And when I say firearms, I'm not just talking about handguns. I'm talking about shotguns, things for hunting. All of that exists in neighborhoods all over. But during fire, high heat, that ammunition will explode. So if possible, you like to notify the first responders, your local police department, let them know, because it does for their safety, and it also puts off the ability for them to get in and fight the fire right away. And then the other aspect of your home defense is consider the small containers of fuel that you might have for garden equipment. California is moving away from two-stroke fuel for small garden tools, weed eaters, branch trimmers, those kind of things, are going to a lot of battery-powered stuff. If you can, go that route. But batteries themselves also have a concern during high heat and fires. One of the things that kept residents out of their neighborhoods in the Southern California fires was the fact that the lithium batteries were off-gassing and creating that atmosphere that's not safe for people to go in without breathing devices. We go to the next slide. And then We talk about this quite frequently for preparation of our own staff, because as working for East Bay Mud, we're all disaster service workers. We're all part of that response that we're going to be expected to come in, but we can't get people to come into work and repair the pipes and do all the things that we need them to do to get everybody water unless they're confident in their own preparation. And packing a go bag is a big part of that. There's hundreds of lists out there for what you can put in a go bag and what it's really going to take. But it's also personal to each individual. But medications are key. Your pet medications are key. And then financial paperwork. If you like to keep it at home and you have it in a safe, most of the fire safes only last for a few hours at a time, and then the contents heat up and they start to catch. Great idea to have the fire safe, but also be aware that if it's sitting there for several hours in a fire, the internal contents are going to heat up, and that might be a problem. Store those things in the cloud if you can and if you're comfortable with it. If you have a secured cloud account, go that route and store copies of the information there. Make sure they're part of your go bag when you leave. Flashlights, all of those things that you just think are key, put those in a go bag and have them ready to go. But also, every time you change the battery in your smoke detector, also check your go bag and make sure anything that you have batteries for in there are current, are refreshed, are new. And then consider having a pair of shoes or slippers, something with a little bit harder sole, near the bed that you can grab and go, because if something happens at night, a lot of windows break, things fall over, you have broken glass, lamp bulbs, things like that that'll be around. It's tough to walk around the house in pitch black when it's dark and you're just awake without having something on your feet so you don't get cut up and you don't have that injury. The other thing I would like you all to consider putting in your go bag is some sort of bleeding control device. Now, we refer to those as a tourniquet. They're small, not very expensive, but we find that as first responders go out to these scenes of disasters, there's a lot of people who have been cut, either it's through something falling or them falling over. So bleeding control is key. If you can find some quick clot, and Amazon is a great location for these things because you can buy these kits already made. But quick clot to stop bleeding for a puncture wound and a tourniquet to stop bleeding for a slicing type of wound goes a long way for the preservation of life for you and your families. You go to the next slide. And then it all comes down to really have a plan. You have all the material, all this.
Steve, I think we're having some connectivity
So
issue
develop
on your
a plan.
end. Steve, I think we're having a little connectivity issue on your end. I'm wondering if maybe, do you want to turn off your camera? It might help with the bandwidth a little bit. There we go.
Are we better?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was talking about having an evacuation plan. That's key. And not just develop one, but really make sure your family and the people that are close to you understand what they're going to do, where they're going to go. So you need multiple options. Some routes to get to your evacuation point might be blocked. So having alternates there. Once you get there, don't leave. Stay at the evacuation point as others show up. Make sure you have a lot of people say this, you have a full tank of gas, have a half a tank of gas. You need some gas in the car to get away from that scene. If you're on electric and you don't charge your car at night, or you charge it every other night, kind of get in the habit of plugging that thing in and making sure that you have the charge to leave the scene as well. Extra clothing certainly helps. Being out there at some of these scenes, a lot of people, that's not part of their go bag, or that's not part of their evacuation plan, but having a couple extra sets of clothes really goes a long way toward the mental health for the people that have had to evacuate and can't go home for a few days. And then you should, when we talk about having a notification plan for loved ones, what we're really talking about is having somebody, one, that you can call and let them know that you're okay, or text is probably the best way to, when the phone lines are all having a lot of people making a call on them. Have somebody to text that say that you can let know you're okay and where you are. And then your family should have the same people in the list so they can text and let them know where you are. If you have somebody that's on the way home and the evacuation order hits, they won't be able to make it in. They might not be able to make it to the first evacuation point. So having multiples is there. And this is how you help coordinate that so you can get word that everybody's safe. And then as the evacuation order does come in, have a list of hotels that are probably 25 to 30 miles away. This is important because you're going to need a place to stay. The activation for Red Cross and FEMA might not hit within the first 6 to 8 hours. It might take a little bit longer, but if you have a list of hotels where you can call and make a reservation as the evacuation order comes in, you'll be a little bit better off. You'll have some place to go. It'll be safe, warm, or cool, depending on what is going on. And it'll give you an opportunity to collect some thoughts, to inventory things that are going on, and give you a spot for your family to get there. And knowing that your loved ones are there around really helps in situations like this. We go next slide. And now what East Bay Mud is doing is an important part. As part of the emergency preparedness team for East Bay Mud, we go through a lot. Our water pipes, obviously, we know are vulnerable to seismic activity, and everything around us in the Bay Area is a seismic active area. So we're constantly watching that, paying attention to it. They started on the quest a few years ago, wanting to replace 10 miles of pipe per year. That has since doubled. We're replacing 20 miles of pipe per year, and we have a little over 4,000 miles of pipe in the ground. So you can see the process of having to revisit those and get those taken care of is something that we're doing on the internal side. We're constantly talking with FEMA. We're a part of the emergency teams for Contra Costa County, Alameda County. We're part of the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, NICRIC, as we call it, because they provide us with a lot of information about what is occurring, threats, potential weather activity. All of these things come into East Bay Mud, and we're constantly making adjustments and plans for our work crews, our customers, and our employees that are in our different buildings throughout. So we do a lot that goes on behind the scenes just to be prepared when something does strike. We know exactly who's going to do what. We're constantly evaluating our emergency operations center and the people that are part of it. So it's never too far from our thought process about what can happen, what could happen, and then being prepared for that. We have business continuity plans that East Bay Mud runs through frequently, and we're always evaluating other plans. We call them LA, local hazard mitigation plans, LHMPs, and we review those for different cities that are in our service district. And it's important to have that kind of collaboration. Not only is it required by law, but it's important to have that so we know when it comes time, and you'll hear a little bit about this later, when it comes time for a community distribution point for our water, we already have that established, and we're not trying to set it up at the time this emergency happens. And then the final piece of our preparation is the fuel mitigation. For California, there's a lot that goes into that, but we're constantly evaluating with all of our first responder partners, all of the stakeholders that are part of this, what our areas look like near our dams and near reservoirs, to make sure that we don't have overgrowing fuel that may ignite at the time of a fire or may help fuel a fire. So we're constantly involved in the mitigation process for those fuels that are out there in the wildland urban interface. Go next slide. Power safety shutoffs. Those are a reality now, as here in California, in Northern California, we get those fairly frequently. We also have a staffing model and an equipment model for when these things hit for East Bay Mud. We are constantly in contact with PG&E, so we get the notice that these things might happen, what areas are going to hit, and then we have the ability to have portable generators that are within our equipment, and we're able to stage these at different locations throughout our service district. So we never have to go far with the equipment. We can send people out, get these things fired up, and make sure that our water can make it from point A to point B. If it needs to be pumped, we have this equipment there ready for it. All the bigger sites for our water distribution have generators that do come on if the power were to be cut off for whatever reason, whether it's a power safety shutoff or something else happens. We have the generator backups in place and ready to go. Those are tested frequently. So we are ready for that to continue to deliver water through this type of power shutoff or loss of power. And 29. We had 29 potential power safety shutoffs that occurred September 2024 to September 2025. We didn't have to deploy everything for each of those, but we were aware, we were on top of it and constantly tracking that kind of information for our people and our equipment. Here we go. And with that, I kind of finished my portion of the presentation. I'll turn it over to Susan, and she'll take on the next part that has to do with the drinking water in an emergency.
Thanks, Steve. Go ahead, Susan.
All right. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So that was great, Steve. Thank you. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk just about the drinking water piece of it. My name is Susan Teefee. I'm the water quality manager here at East Bay Mud. Can I have the next slide? I'm going to talk about three big concepts, three big ideas here: storing water, treating water, and getting more water. So we'll go through each one of those one by one. This shouldn't be a surprise, but to some people this is a surprise. Water may not be available during a really big emergency. And I put a couple of examples here. I don't want to throw our friends from Los Angeles under the bus, but there have been a couple of important lessons that have been learned recently. These are 2025 examples. This first one, that big thing on the top there is a valve. It was buried 20 feet underground, and they needed to actuate that valve, and it got broken in the closed position. So by the time they could dig down and get it and deal with all the conflicts, there were gas lines and power lines and a lot of other stuff in the way. It took them a long time to get that valve out of there and replace it. There were over 9,000 people that were out of water or under a boil water notice for about a week's worth of time. So this was just a month or two ago in Los Angeles. And then I'm sure everyone's heard about the more recent or the most recent huge fire in California, the Palisades fire and Eaton. Thousands of people there were out of water or under a do not use order it took them about a month to clear everything out water quality wise through their whole distribution system that was impacted by the fire. So next slide. Fortunately, we don't have any recent emergencies at East Bay Mud. I should knock on some wood somewhere. We do have a lot, and Steve showed a little bit of a schematic there. We have a lot of redundant components in our system and redundant facilities, multiple pumping plants. We have different ways we can get water from one part of the system to another. We have multiple water treatment plants. And so we can move water all around our distribution system. And we do have a lot of really excellent employees that know how to do that, and a lot of emergency equipment, temporary pipe connections, temporary pumps, portable generators, things that we can move around as needed. And we practice with those things all the time. But the reality is, in a really big disaster, we may not be able to serve water everywhere in our system. And when we do serve water after a major event like that, it may not be suitable to drink. It may not be potable. Next slide. We live in earthquake country. I didn't put the fault on this map, but the Hayward fault runs right through our system. And Steve talked a little bit about this. We've been working for years studying the seismic activity in the area, understanding what that may look like for us in terms of damage. And the models that we've come up with have indicated that there may be thousands, 5,000, 6,000, something on that order, pipe breaks all at once in a large earthquake on the Hayward fault. And to put that in context, our crews fix around 1,000 breaks every year, but thousands all in one day will overwhelm our crews. We have mutual aid agreements with other water agencies, and we are quite confident that help will arrive and we'll get the system restored as soon as we possibly can. And we will, in general, this is a simplification, but we're going to basically restore the system piece by piece. We have a lot of different pressure zones, area by area. We put it back together, we flush it, we chlorinate it, we test it, make sure it's good, and then we move on to the next section. That's the only way that you can really do this. And we have a system in place where we will update maps. They're interactive maps, so you can enter an address. It's kind of hard to see here, this little search bar here, but you can type in your address or your kid's school address or someone that you're concerned about in the area and find out what the status of the water is at their particular location. And we'll keep that updated as frequently as we can in the time right after an emergency. Next slide. So all of that is to say, it would be great if everyone would store some water before the big emergency happens. That's really a super helpful thing that you can do to make your life easier in those first few days, especially. The idea is you're going to store water when it's there, and then use that stored water when there's no water coming out of your faucet. Fill up containers with potable water now and keep it potable is really the idea. In terms of how much, the recommendations vary. We recommend 2 gallons per person per day for about a week. And don't forget your pets. I have a big dog who's very thirsty. I got an extra gallon for her. FEMA recommends 1 gallon per person per day for several days, is what they say. And the Centers for Disease Control recommend 1 gallon per person per day and enough for 3 days of storage. The more the better, if you can, if you have space and you can do it, it's great to store as much as you can. Next slide. Some things to think about when you're storing water. It does take up space. It's ideal if you can find a space near the water source, so somewhere near a faucet that you're going to be filling up your containers, and then think about where you're going to dispose of that water. So if you have a place that you're going to water some plants with or something, it could be near that. It's important to use food grade materials that are intended for long-term water storage. And water's heavy. This should be obvious too, but like a gallon of water weighs about like as much as a bowling ball, around 8 pounds, a little more than 8 pounds. So that means a 55-gallon drum weighs more than 450 pounds. That's a lot. I certainly cannot, I have trouble lifting, smaller quantities of water. So pumping the water or having it flow by gravity is much easier than physically moving a container full of water. And there's lots of ways to do that. And then it's important to remember that our water is disinfected. It's safe to drink, but it's not sterilized. So unless your water's factory sealed, like it's pasteurized and sealed up in a factory, you're going to want to change it out regularly. And we recommend twice per year. The container should be opaque, meaning like light can't transfer through it, so that microbes, slime, algae, things like that won't grow on the inside. And then, like I said, you can water plants with it when you're ready to discard it. Next slide. There's lots of options out there. Catherine talked about the bricks. So the upper right-hand corner, those 3.5-gallon stackable bricks are pretty neat. When they're full, they weigh about 30 pounds. You can stack them up relatively high, or you can go one layer. They fit like under a bed or under a desk, that you can put them in stash them in a lot of places. And if you're comfortable moving around a 30-pound container, they're quite handy for that. The blue drum on the left is a 30-gallon drum that weighs about 250 pounds when it's full. That's what I have at my house, just because I have a nice little space under the stairs where I can stick that. You can also buy these 5-gallon carboys. They stack really nicely as well. These ones will weigh about 40 pounds when they're done. And then you can buy cans. I didn't realize this until fairly recently. They look, just like a soda can or a beer can, but they're all sealed up and they're good almost indefinitely. They're pasteurized or sterilized basically in the factory. And so you can get those and stick them somewhere and really not have to worry about it too much. I would avoid single-use plastic bottles, like the clear plastic that you get that's like a Coke, a soda bottle. Those are really not meant for long-term use. They will start to degrade after a while. So you're going to want something that's, like I said, opaque and a little bit more rugged for long-term use. Next slide. And it's good to think about how you're going to get the water out of there. You could certainly pick up a can and drink that, but in a barrel or one of the larger containers, they make nice hand pumps. If you're out of water, you may also be out of power. So a pump that you can operate by hand is really nice. They make little spigots for the bricks and actually for other types of carboys as well, so you can get the water to flow out by gravity. And then a little siphon pump is also a really easy thing to have as well. That's handy for emptying your barrel out as well as dispensing, when you want to use it during an emergency. Next slide. All right, so when the water comes back, it may not be safe to drink. And so you're going to want to think about ways to treat it. So the way that you'll know that, at least we hope, in our system, we're going to work really hard to put out notifications to the public. We have a system where you can sign up to get alerts. You have to sign up. We can't just send them out to everyone. So sign up for East Bay Mud Alerts. It's on our website. And both Alameda County and Contra Costa County have alert systems too, and a lot of information comes out via text, basically, during emergency situations like that. We work closely with the counties to make sure that our messages can get broadcast as well, or information about the status of the water system can go out through those sorts of channels. And when I talk about treatment here, I'm really talking about disinfection, killing microbes, pathogens, things that could make you sick. I would recommend not to treat water that's been chemically contaminated, because you don't really know what chemical it is in an emergency scenario. And to properly treat for a chemical contaminant, you have to choose the right treatment method. And there's just too many choices to discuss here. So if we're under a do not use order, like don't drink the water at all, boiling is not even going to make it safe, we'll put that information out with our public notices. So when the water does return, you're going to want to flush out all your house lines and remember to discard ice or like water that might have come into your house, like if you have a water dispenser in your refrigerator, just flush everything out and remove all the potentially contaminated water. Next slide. Types of disinfection, boiling is my favorite. There's a reason they call a notice a boil water notice. Boiling works great. It kills everything that could make you sick. Giardia, Cryptosporidium, different kinds of bacteria, viruses. It works really well. If you don't have your stove functioning and you have a camp stove, you could certainly use that. Don't use your camp stove inside. That seems obvious, but don't do that. Bring it to a full boil, let it cool, and store it in a clean container, and you're good to go. Super simple. Next slide. And if you can't or don't want to boil your water, there are disinfectants. I put 4 different ways here of disinfecting water. These are all, and I'm not trying to endorse any particular product. These are just ones that are readily available that I know work. So iodide tablets over there on the left, they've been around for a very long time. You can get them at camping stores, backpacking places. They're really effective for viruses and bacteria, not so much for Cryptosporidium, but that's not a huge concern in our water supply. You do have to wait about 30 minutes before you drink the water once you put the tablet in. But the nice thing about them is that they're stable for years. If you don't open that little tablet, I think they're good for, I don't know, multiple years. You can keep them and they're still effective. So, and they're super cheap. I think this little bottle is like $5 or something like that. So it's a really nice, if you didn't do anything else and you just got a bottle of tablets, at least you're one step ahead of doing, nothing. The one in the middle there is chlorine. That's actually what we use to disinfect our water on a larger scale, but it's basically the same ingredient that's in chlorine bleach. It's really effective for killing viruses and bacteria. It doesn't work on Cryptosporidium, not really at all. But again, not a huge concern in our water. Use plain bleach. Be careful with the label. There may be things, and it'll say on there lavender scented or stabilizers or even non-chlorine bleach. None of that stuff is sodium hypochlorite. The primary ingredient should say sodium hypochlorite. And you only need about a half a teaspoon in 5 gallons. It's pretty inexpensive and people usually have it around the house. So that's a really good way to disinfect your water. And then moving on to on the right-hand side here, they make these neat little, I think this one's called a SteriPen. It's basically a portable UV light source that you put in the water, and it is pretty effective for Giardia, Cryptosporidium, not necessarily viruses. You can use a little chlorine for that. They're not cheap. I think this thing runs around $100, something like that. And you do need batteries that, function in an emergency. So those would have to be kept fresh. But it does work well. It's actually what we're putting in one of our treatment plants right now. We're using UV light for Giardia and Cryptosporidium inactivation, actually. So it's highly effective. And then more recently at the bottom here, chlorine dioxide, they are little packets. You can buy now a 2-part kit. And chlorine dioxide is a really effective disinfectant as well. You have to kind of do this in 2 parts. It's not stable once they're mixed, but if you follow the instructions, it's pretty straightforward. You do have to wait a little longer. They recommend about 4 hours after you add the stuff to your water, and then it's safe to drink. So these are all just ways, aside from boiling, that you can render those pathogens dead, basically. Next slide. Another thing that you can do that's kind of the same sort of idea is filter the pathogens out. And this is just a collection of different hand-operated filtration systems. These are commercially available at REI or camping stores, things like that, sporting goods stores. And they basically filter out the pathogens, and they use your own energy, if you will. It's like a squeeze bottle. You put your unsafe water in there and squeeze it through the filter, and then the water that comes out is safe to drink. Generally, they're like 0.1 micron or less, the size of the filter, so they filter out pretty much all the pathogens that we're concerned about. Next slide. So moving away from disinfection to getting more water, it's unfortunately, in a sense, we collectively have a lot of experience with how these major disasters go, and it's likely that the Red Cross or other NGOs will respond in a major disaster, and one of the things that they do is bring in water. This photo shows them handing out cases of bottled water, and that is great. They will likely be around to do that. And we will work with the local emergency response groups to help get that information about where those locations are. It won't happen right away. It'll take a while for them to get set up. So the idea is that you're going to be able to use your stored water in the interim until you can go and get some refills, if you will. Yeah, so that's it for that. Next slide. You can get a little creative if you want. Your homes, if you have a hot water heater, not an instant one, but a water heater that stores some water. Usually these are 25 to 50 gallons. If it's been strapped or anchored and it survived the earthquake, it may be a pretty nice source of water. If it's old and corroded, you may have to filter it before you drink it. But if it survived the earthquake, it's not a bad place to look for water. If you have a swimming pool or a hot tub, you wouldn't want to drink that water, but you could use it for toilet flushing if there's no other water coming into your house, or for just basic hygiene and washing. And melted ice is another good source if you happen to have some of those. So just think about where you might get water in the interim until you can go get some more water. And then I think next slide, we're going to talk about getting more water, right? There you go. So we have these things, and Steve talked about this a little bit. This is basically a water distribution device. It's a manifold that we can hook a pipe up to, and it's got a bunch of spigots on it. And the idea is that people could come and bring an empty container and fill them up. So we will work hard to get these things out throughout our system. And so it's good to have suitable containers available. There are these ones that I'm picturing here are called Cubitainers. They're just flexible plastic, and they fold up so you can stick them almost anywhere and have those available. Next slide. We've got locations kind of pre-designated where we'll set these up, but we can't really say for sure where they'll be because we need to put them where there's water. So the idea is that we would hook them up. This one here is hooked up to a hydrant. This was just a practice, but basically we'll hook them up to some place where we know we have water, and allow people to come in and fill up their containers. It may take a week or so for us to determine where those are going to be and for us to set them up. And there'll be places like schools or community centers that have big parking lots so people can just drive in and fill up their containers. And we're going to co-locate these with other distribution facilities. So like let's say the Red Cross comes in and they're distributing diapers or food or cases of water, we'll set those up there as well. So it's what they call a CPOD, which is the community point of distribution. And we'll work with those organizations to get that information out in our alerts as well as the other county alerts in the post-disaster scenario. We don't know if these are going to be potable or not right now. It's impossible to say, but we'll have signs up that say whether you can drink it or not. And we'll be, like I said, testing and determining which ones are suitable to drink and which ones are not. And at the moment, we have about 100 of these already kind of dispersed throughout our service area. So that's our plan for getting water before we get a chance to fix all the broken pipes. Next slide. All right, so that's it. It's a lot. I know it's a little bit, it's kind of overwhelming. But you don't have to do all of this at once. You can just pick one thing and get some practice with it. Think about where you might store water. Get one of those little tablets and decide if you like it. They don't taste very good. That water's kind of yucky tasting with iodine in it. And if you hate that, then maybe you want to think about a UV light system, or maybe a squeeze bottle works better for you, or maybe you want to stock up on more bricks. Just kind of think things through, and consider storing more water if you can. Not everybody's going to be able to do this, so your friends and family and neighbors may need some help as well. What makes this work in the post-disaster scenario is that everybody helps out everybody else, and we all make it through. So that is all I have, and I think we have time for questions, right?
Yeah, we sure do. So thank you so much, Susan and Steve, for those presentations tonight. Just a reminder, so we're going to do some questions. But again, if you don't get your question answered tonight, or if you think of something later, you can always email us at waterwednesday@ebmud.com. And again, just a reminder, so if you want to get started on your own water storage, please enter to win one of those water bricks. We're going to be giving 10 of them away to different winners. I think that you need to enter by September 30th at 11:59 p.m. And we're going to be selecting 10 winners to win one of those water bricks. So please, ebmud.com/giveaway to join that giveaway. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to I'm looking at our questions here. So our first question is going to be, what does East Bay Mud do to keep water safe after an earthquake? It looks like there's a couple questions there. So I'll pose that to Susan. So what does East Bay Mud do to keep water safe after an earthquake?
Sure. Well, we have a whole seismic improvement program that we've gone through for decades now, where we've, in essence, hardened a lot of our facilities to make sure that they don't break in an earthquake. We know where the fault is, or we know where all the big faults are. Anyway, the active faults. We have systems in place. My favorite is a bunch of these vaults. So like basically a big hole in the ground lined with concrete, and we can install portable pipes to jump over the fault. If that pipe breaks, we have valves that we can shut and portable pipes that we can deploy relatively quickly to reconnect them and keep people in water. So that's great. All of our treatment plants have backup power. There's just a lot of those kinds of things: portable pumps, portable power facility, portable power generators, basically. So we have a lot of that in place, and that works pretty well. Pressure really is what keeps the dirt out. So if we can keep pressure in the system, it keeps the dirt out of the pipes, keeps the contaminants out. So we try to maintain everything pressurized. So that's pretty much it. You know, if we lose pressure, if we lose too many pipes at the same time, or if we lose a tank, then and it drains, that's when contaminants can get in. And that's when we have to go through the process I talked about, where basically have to repair them and then repressurize them and flush them out and rechlorinate them. So it takes a lot of time to get back to potable. So we try to maintain the pressure so we don't lose that potability, if you will.
Great, thank you. So this question is going to be for Steve. So there was a question about the public safety power shutoffs. And so the question was, I don't remember what you said about the power necessary for EBMed to keep water flowing to us and keep our homes faucets working. If there is a PSPS and we don't have power, can East Bay Med still keep water flowing to us, and can we still get water from our faucets?
And the short answer is yes. It's a complicated process, but essentially you have generator power backups at the different water facilities. Those generate the power for to push water through. We have smaller versions of that at the reservoirs throughout the district and set and ready to go. We also have smaller generators that are more portable for that the locations closest to a, let's say, a far out kind of reservoir that might not have the ability for a gravity feed or something where pressure drops. We can increase that a little bit. So there's things that are in place. We've exercised those things. We took the portable pipe, the flexible pipe that Susan was talking about, and went out into our working district and had the crews do exactly what was described. Jump the pipe, fill this new thing with water, make sure we could generate the pressure needed. Off it went, and we'll do this year. We'll hook something up to one of the seat pods that you saw. Make sure our people are ready to go, understand what's going to be needed, and we have it all with us to make it go.
Great, thank you so much. So there's a couple questions that have
One
come
thing
in.
I was,
Oh,
I
sorry.
was just going to add. So
Yeah.
we're fortunate in our area. More than half of our customers are supplied by gravity. So the treatment plants will still work with gravity, and we will supply about half of our customers, and there's never a gravity outage. So, you know, the places where we strategically stage those portable pumps and portable generators are to get water up the hills, because we do supply water up to 1,500 feet or so. So that's the more sensitive areas. The high areas in the hills in particular is hard. We have to pump that water up there, and that's why we have all those generators.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So there's a couple of questions that have been coming in about using swimming pool water for drinking water. If there's any way to filter that, to make that safe to drink, or if anything can be done if you have a swimming pool.
Yeah, it's hard because what happens with a swimming pool after a while, if you keep, you add chlorine to it all the time, chlorine is really just salt. It just breaks down sodium and chloride. Filtering out salt is really hard. You need something like reverse osmosis to do that. It can be done, but it takes a tremendous amount of energy to do it. And it'll just taste salty. You can make it safe so that it won't make you sick, but it won't taste good. So I would suggest, like I said, toilet flushing or washing, things like that, hygiene uses, it's fine for, but it's just going to taste a little salty. So you could, I don't know of a device that you could get other than a reverse osmosis system that would take the salts out. That's hard to do.
Great, thank you. One question somebody had asked if this is gonna, this transcript is gonna be available. So the recording of tonight's presentation will be available on our website at ebmed.com/Water Wednesday. Usually by next week, in about a week, it will be online. And then also we'll make the slide deck available online too at ebmed.com/Water Wednesday, so you can check it out there. So if you missed anything, you can always rewatch it. So another question, Susan, this one's going to be for you too. So for collecting rainwater, and I'm assuming they mean to then use not for irrigation, but to actually drink. Is there certain techniques that you would suggest for that?
Yeah, and there's a lot of systems out there now. People do that a lot, and there are cool, like kind of rectangular tanks that you can put like up against the side of your house and gather the water off the roof and then use it for watering plants. And yeah, that's a great source of water during the emergency scenario. I would suggest you'd probably want to strap that to your wall in some way. I would worry that that would, fall over in an earthquake. But if they survive the earthquake, they're not going to be potable right away. You're going to want to boil them or disinfect it in some way. But once you do that, they should be totally fine. That's a good source of water if you have that. And like I said, some of them are big. Some people store like 1,000 gallons of water for irrigation. That's good.
Great, thanks. So Steve, this question's for you. There was a question in regard to your slide about storing propane tanks and where would be the safest place to store some of those combustible items.
Well, for the propane tanks, the best place is as far from the house as you can. So some of those residences that are part of our service district in Amador County, near Pardee and the dam that are up there, they have large propane tanks that are part of their system for their home, for their cooking. And those are stored a required distance from the house. But here in a more urban type of setting, as far from the house as you can store them. So if you have an outdoor shed or something like that, that's away from the actual walls of the house, best spot. What you don't want to do is keep it in the garage where you have the other vehicles, you have gasoline, you have other stuff that's in there in the garage. Keep it away from that. Best to have it detached from the house. So if there's something going on inside the dwelling, that is removed from as far as you can from that particular threat.
Great, thank you. So another question, they were asking about water treatment being changed from chlorine to chloramine, and if it has now gone back to just chlorine, or if we're still using chloramine.
Oh, yeah, we're still using chloramine throughout our whole system. You don't need to do that at home. Just regular chlorine is fine. That's what we use. So we use chlorine at the treatment plants, and then we let that be in contact with the water for a little while, and then we add ammonia, and that forms chloramine. That's what we have out in the distribution system. And the chloramine isn't as strong a disinfectant as the free chlorine is, but it lasts longer throughout the distribution system. So, but for your own use in the house, you don't need to worry about the ammonia piece of it. You could just use straight chlorine.
Great, thank you. So there's a question about the firefighters running out of water pressure during the Oakland firestorm. I would refer you to our March Water Wednesday. We had subject matter experts talking about, how East Bay Med is prepared to respond to urban wildfires. And so I think that would be a good resource for you. So if you had fire specific questions, that's a really good one. I'm looking to see. I think most other questions have been answered. We'll give a couple of seconds to roll in. I would like to make a plug for our next Water Wednesday, which, excuse me, I dropped my cheat sheet here, so I'm going to grab it. So join us on Wednesday, November 19th. So that's going to be our next Water Wednesday. It's called From River to Return Inside the McCallamy Fish Hatchery. So we're going to talk about what East Bay Mud is doing to manage salmon spawning, improve the McCallamy River habitat, and manage river flows in the McCallamy River. So please join us for that. And with that, I think we pretty much answered most of our questions tonight. There's one specifically about, I don't know, Susan, if you have thoughts. They were asking about emergency water filter purification powder packs for camping. Are you familiar with those or have any insight on those?
I'm not. There are lots of choices out there. So
yeah.
If it's, I don't know.
Yeah, it says it's registered as a disinfectant by the EPA. So I mean, it sounds like, any of those a lot of that camping stuff. I mean, it sounds like it's pretty good and reliable things that you can use.
And I had one more too.
Oh yeah.
There was one that came in the chat about alternatives to gorilla hair mulch. And I should have mentioned that. But now, if you don't want to go with the rock, different types of aggregate that are out there, there's other options that are the rubberized, it looks like bark, but they're the rubberized bark look-alike. They'll probably melt in a fire. Well, I'm sure that they would melt in a fire, but you won't have the situation where an ember may land on it and then another fire will start there. So those are a couple of good alternatives. If you go with the smaller aggregate, the rock type, get the rock glue, the aggregate glue that helps keep it down so it won't blow away or move away when people come to, or you're doing yard work, things like that. But two good options, rock and the rubberized bark.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. So thank you so much, Susan and Steve, for being here tonight. Again, this presentation will be online next week, both the slide deck and the recording. So you can view it there. And again, everyone have a wonderful night. I hope you all go home and get your go bags ready and go store some water. All right. Thanks so much. Have a good one. Bye.